Hey, 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 welcome to Dr. Amber's Know and Grow podcast. I hope you all are doing well. So, the other day, I was at my mother in law's house picking up one of the kids, and we were talking, and she asked me, "What is my rising sign?" She was like, "So, what's my rising sign?" And I was like, I don't know. And so I talked her through the process of how to find out what her rising sign is. And I was like, look, you need your birth time. I was like, if you know the time you're born, the day, and then the place, I can help you find your rising sign. And then we just generally had a conversation about the difference between sun signs, rising signs, moon signs, the whole astrology thing. And it hit me, oh, this is what some of the people in my life see me doing, and they're becoming intrigued, they're interested. And it somewhat inspired this episode today about exploring spirituality and spiritual practices as an adult who is a millennial, and also as a parent. This is a topic that I have been thinking about for years in various ways and for various reasons. My relationship to religion and spirituality has changed significantly over the past few years, and even more so now as a parent and as an adult who is like going to be 40 in the next few years. My relationship with spirituality, spiritual practices, my understanding of that is just so different from what it used to be. And I wanted to just start the conversation about that here because I know that I'm probably not the only one who is thinking about like God and spirituality and religion, and then how to help my children understand that, but then also how to be authentic to myself and what feels good to me. It's an interesting thing. So, today I want to talk about the process of exploring spirituality as a millennial, but then also as a parent, and what my journey has been like so far. But then I would love to hear from you all after you listen to this episode, whether it's in the comments on YouTube, in the comments on Instagram, DM me. Let me know, what are you doing in terms of your spiritual practices? How has your spiritual self evolved or transformed over the last few years? I want to talk about it because I feel like this is definitely an area where people are needing some guidance and or wanting to just know what other people are doing because it just feels so new. So let's start. But first, hey everyone, I hope you are doing good. I am wearing regular clothes today because after this, me and my family are going to have a zoo day on the day that I'm recording this. This is actually my daughter's third birthday. Um, She's 3 today. And so we are out. My son is out for spring break, so he has no school. Today, my daughter's daycare actually is closed for Emancipation Day, which is something that DC does. And so the kids are home. I decided to take off. My husband's taking off, and we're having a zoo day. We're going to go out to eat breakfast, then we're going to go to the zoo and just have a full, fun day with no time pressure, time restraints, no nap times, no nothing. So after this, that's what I'll be doing, and I'm excited. I'm excited. On another episode, we'll talk about what it's like to have a 3 and a 5 year old now instead of a 2 and a 4 year old, and then how it's different from having a 1 and a 3 year old. Y'all, it's getting better for sure. It's getting better for sure, and I'm loving that for me. But in the meantime, let's talk about spirituality, religion. And so I wanted to actually just talk a little bit about my history of spirituality, the makings of me, just in terms of religion and spirituality. And I'm sure that some of this probably feels relevant or resonates with you all because I just feel like there's something about many of us, we have similar upbringings or similar experiences. While they're not all the same, they're not too far off. Okay, so for me, I'm a millennial. Y'all know that I'm 36 years old. Something you may not know about me is I grew up in the Midwest. I grew up in Ohio, Dayton, Ohio. And so, my family, I grew up with my mom, my dad, my younger brother, but we were always surrounded by my dad's side of the family. Um, one thing about my extended family was they stayed together, at least on my dad's side of the family. They were originally from Georgia, and then they all, one by one, migrated up to Ohio, and that's where they all stayed. And when I say all of them, all nine of the siblings. My father was the youngest one, and my grandmother was there too, and they all stayed close and close to their mother and close to each other. They, most of them all had children. I kid you not, my family is so large. On my dad's side, he had like nine siblings. My mother also was a family of 10. She was like in the middle. Everybody has children. So I have at least 60, 70 cousins. Some first cousins, some second cousins. A lot of my second cousins are my age because my first cousins were like 20 years older than me. Like, it's just so interesting, my family tree. So I have a lot of family is what I'm trying to say, and I grew up with a lot of family, and my family was very, very dedicated to their religious practice. God, my uncle was our pastor, and so I grew up essentially in a church family. My uncle, he was the pastor of our church. Y'all, I'm sorry. I paused because somebody's up. I record in my basement, and I can always hear the kids upstairs, and I just heard a loud boom. It literally sounded like someone was hurt, but I didn't hear any screaming, so I guess we're fine. So sorry about that. That scared me. Y'all understand how that goes. Anyways, so my uncle was the pastor of our church, and it was the only church I went to growing up. New Testament Missionary Baptist Church in Dayton, Ohio. That's where I grew up. Went to church every single Sunday, sometimes multiple times with all of my family. It was a very small family church, and so essentially anybody that was in the church was a family member or very close friends of the family. Did anybody else grow up like that? Um, I really actually miss some of that because it was like this sense of community that was just always there, even if you weren't consistently going to church. Me and my family, we were, but I had some cousins that would come like monthly. There were some aunts and my uncles who would come like for the holidays, but either way, it was always like you always have a place here at the church. You're always welcome here. You are always loved here. We want to see you here. Come, come. Of course, there was also the church shenanigans. Y'all know how black churches are. But either way, I grew up feeling so loved and belonged, and like this was my community, this is my home, these are my people. And so that's my memories of our church growing up. I grew up in a church. I grew up a church girl. I have pastor uncles that are pastors, and cousins who became pastors. And so I grew up churchy. Identified as Christian, Baptist. And so that was very much ingrained into who I was as a child, but then also who I became as a young adult. Church. Church, 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 church. But as you know, we all grow up. And I started to realize that as I went off to college, I went off to Ohio State, which was like an hour away from my hometown. And because there was no more structure that my family had placed around Sundays and church going, I didn't go to church anymore. Now as a college student, church was just not a factor in my life because my Sundays typically revolved around recovering from the weekend or catching up on homework at the library or just chilling with your friends. My Sundays were mine. And I'm not going to lie, after 18 years of going to church every single week, there was something about feeling, there was something that felt really good about having my Sundays back. I got to decide what I wanted to do with my Sundays and not being told that I was going to go to church. And, because as a teenager, that's kind of how it became. We're going to church. This is what we do. Did I want to go? Not necessarily. It wasn't the worst thing in the world, but There were other things that I probably wanted to do. But as a college student, I got to decide, and church was just no longer something that I was interested in. But God still was very much a part of my life, and prayer was still something that I did. I actually did also have a churchy roommate, and and she and her family invited us to church every now and then. So there were a few days where I would go to church with her and her family, but not often, and she wouldn't go often either. Um, After college, I went to graduate school, and still, church just was not a thing for me. It's funny, I actually moved back to my hometown for graduate school, but still really didn't get back into the practice of going to church. And at that point, I think I was so focused on my career and my education and the process of becoming a psychologist as I was a graduate student. Spirituality just wasn't even a focus for me anymore. I still had the foundation laid, thankfully, for my family for, the years I spent in church, but my priority was getting my degree, doing a good job so I could become a psychologist. It was no longer spirituality or religion at all. In 2013, I moved to Oakland, California. This is one of the best years of my life, just in terms of how much it pushed me outside of my comfort zone. And maybe I'll talk about this year in another episode. But 2013, I moved to Oakland, California for a pre-doctoral internship. So anybody who becomes a psychologist, your fifth year in your program, you are going on internship. You don't have to go far away for it, but for some reason I was really craving this exploration in my life. My whole life I had spent in Ohio, and I was so ready to do something completely different. So I literally decided I want to move on the whole opposite end of the country. My family thought I was nuts because neither of them had done anything so adventurous or so different. And it was just like, I need to go. There was something about California that was calling me. And thank God the universe aligned, because that's where I ended up. I spent a year in Oakland by myself doing my internship. I had a great intern cohort, great supervisors in my internship, but for the most part, it was just me out there. And there was something about that year that really started to reignite my desire for spiritual practices, my desire for connection to a higher power or something bigger than me. I think there was something about moving out of my comfort zone in such a drastic way, but then also this process of me like becoming this new person through my graduate training as a psychologist, because that's something I will say about becoming a psychologist. It it prepares you to be a professional, but it also really changes your mindset, your perspectives, the way that you look at the world. Actually, I'm just having this insight now. Not only was it me moving to Oakland, but it also was me becoming a psychologist that really started to change the way I thought about religion, change the way I thought about spirituality. And then once I left and went to Oakland, it was like, okay, now I'm craving something. I'm needing something. I'm wanting a connection, and I'm not sure what it is. I knew that I didn't want necessarily the same means of connection to God or to a higher power that I had before. I didn't want to necessarily engage in the same Christian religious practices. I didn't want to go to the same type of church. There was something that I needed that felt different. All the while, this I didn't mention, as a teenager and becoming a young adult, there were also some things about my Christian upbringing that just didn't align with me anymore. There were practices that I just did not enjoy. There were beliefs that I did not share. And I just didn't feel as if this religion or this way of doing it really reflected what I really needed in terms of spirituality. As a teenager, I didn't know what I needed. I just knew I didn't like this. But then growing and becoming an adult, leaving, moving to Oakland, it was like, okay, I know what I've had. I know that I started to become discontent with it. Now is my time to explore. 2023 in Oakland, California was the first time that I really started to open my mind and my heart to different ways of being spiritual. It was the time that allowed me the space to do it because I didn't have the influence of my family around me. Not to say my family was a bad influence, but my family was a heavy influence on the way that they did spirituality or they did religion. And I needed the freedom to really just think about what I wanted to do. I needed the freedom to just try different things without fear of what is God gonna think or what is my parents gonna think, what is my uncle gonna say. I needed the freedom to explore without any influence or opinion or judgment from anybody. And I got that year. And that really propelled me to really just be so much more open to other ways of being spiritual, but then also doing it without fear of what other people will think of me. I think often many people get stuck in their spiritual journey or their religious practices because of fear of judgment or the opinions of other people that they're close to, but who may not understand this walk or this journey they want to go on. You know, the first way that I started to really explore spirituality in a new way when I was living in Oakland was attending a Buddhist now I'm losing the words for like what it was actually called. It was a Buddhist center. Let's call it a center, a Buddhist center. I had read a little bit about Buddhism and I was curious. And in Oakland, in the Bay Area, there's so much. And that was what I loved about being there. Whatever you want, we can find it. Okay, whether it's about your spirituality, whether it's about your health, whether it's about your looks, whatever you want to explore is out here. I started going to a Buddhist center and learning about meditation. And so, literally, what it was, they called them sanghas. I think that's the word. You would go, there would be fellowship, and then there would be like a word. So kind of like a sermon, but not a sermon from the Buddhist teacher. And then we all would sit for meditation. That was the first time I had ever experienced anything like that. But I loved it because that was also my introduction into meditation and what that could do for me. I went there weekly for a few months and really enjoyed it. And then I started to go less to the center, but instead started to really incorporate meditation into my life so much more. That year when I lived in Oakland, I was meditating the most I had ever meditated before. Like every day I would meditate for minutes at a time, every single day. And it was the first time I had felt so grounded. It was the first time I had felt so connected. It was the first time I had felt so at peace. There was something about meditation where I was craving it every day. It was just like, oh, I cannot wait to go meditate, to be with myself, and to feel my soul, feel who is inside of me, but also feel who I'm connected to. Meditation became a huge part of my spiritual journey. After that, I did end up finding a church there, but it was a church that was not Christian. It actually was very eclectic, and I loved it. And what I loved about it was there was Buddhist influences, and there were Christian influences, and they would read from like the Quran a few times. Like it was just like this blend and mix of like all different types of religion that were united by spirituality, by community, by love. And that was just phenomenal to me. It was so diverse. Like the people there was like a mix of everybody. The pastor was this older black woman and she just was so wise, and I just felt so at home in this place that, I'll be honest, the family I grew up with, the Christian upbringing I grew up with, they would have frowned upon it. They would have been skeptical of it. They would have led me to be fearful about what I was engaging in, right? And it's all because of lack of understanding. Sometimes we just don't understand, these other spiritual practices or these other ways of being because we haven't explored them. Or, because maybe your beliefs tell you that there's something wrong with it. But I was starting to break out of that idea that, hey, there's nothing wrong with meditation because sometimes Christianity says that that's not okay. There's nothing wrong with exploring other religions. I'm not hurting anybody. I'm not hurting myself. There's nothing wrong with going to a different type of church that's not Christian. These are all fine. That year, I really started to realize that for me, it was not necessarily religion, but it was spiritual practices and spirituality. That's what I needed. And what I realized is that spiritual practices helped me to feel connection. They helped me to feel love for myself and other people. They helped me to trust the process of life. Spirituality helped me to tap into my intuition. Spirituality helped me to calm my mind and my body in this very metaphysical way that I had never had access to before. Spirituality helped me to love this process of life and to just be with it and to understand how sacred and precious it was. I love it. Like, I love that time of my life, that year of my life when I really started to explore because it really helped me to know this is what I want. This is what I need from spirituality. It's really a deeper connection, a deeper understanding. During that year, I also started to read books to just help me improve myself, help me to know myself, help me to grow. That also became a big part of my spirituality. The one book that changed my life this year, All About Love, New Visions by Bell Hooks, that became just such a foundational part of like me in my self-love journey or me in my love journey period of like life and things and people and acceptance of people and their mistakes and their, imperfections. It was just such a good book for me. I read so many other books that year, spiritual books, a lot of Buddhist books that just really helped open me up and expand me to all these other ways that I could know, period. That year was also the year that I had my first ever tarot reading. I was at a flea market. Oh God, I miss those. I miss Oakland. I miss that time. I miss everything about that year. But there was a flea market that I would go to like once a month, and there was a tarot reader there, and it was my very first time. I was so nervous, but I was just like, okay, this is my first time, but I really want to do this. And baby, that shit was wild. It completely like I don't know what that was that she did, but everything she said happened. And it was just like, wow, there's something here. There's something powerful here. And I just don't think that this knowing or this process is in vain. Like, I just don't think that this is something that my God, my creator, would not want me to have access to. So let's get back to the present now, right? Now I'm this person who I appreciate the value of meditation. I no longer identify as Christian. I'm very much, sometimes I say Christian adjacent. And what that means is my life and my beliefs sometimes are very much influenced by my Christian upbringing. But it's not something that I would say that I identify as anymore. Um, I am someone who loves tarot. Y'all know I do this here on the podcast occasionally, and I very much am an astrology fanatic. I'm in the process of learning it. I want to go deeper in that practice because I now also see that as a tool to guide me in my spiritual journey, right? So very much different from who I was 20 years ago and who I thought I would be when I thought about me as um, my spirituality or religion or my relationship with God. Also, with my relationship with God, God is still very much a center in my life, the center of this life. However, sometimes you'll hear me say God, the universe, the creator, higher power. I like to use all of those words interchangeably. And I know that many people have, again, varying beliefs about that, varying levels of comfort with that. Some people are completely against saying the universe. But for me, it's all the same. You know, when I'm talking about the universe, I'm talking about this energy, this force that's guiding this process of life. And I also know God to be that. And so that's who I am now. And so now I'm this person who are doing these things and walking through my life, trying to stay grounded in these things. And then I become a parent. I'm a parent now. I got kids. And so then there's this thing where it's like, oh shit, how do I help them understand their spirituality? And so this is where it kind of got tricky for me, because I realized that while I probably will never go back to the Christian upbringing that I grew up with, I can't deny that was what taught me my relationship with God. Like that consistently going to church every week, being with my family in that very religious setting. Like that is what molded and brought together my understanding of God, of prayer, of, the fact that God created us. Like that was it. So I've been thinking a lot about, okay, as a parent who has kind of separated themselves from the Christian church and the Christian traditional way of being, who is now exploring all these other spiritual practices, how do I help my children understand this? How do I help my children to learn and understand their spiritual selves, cultivate a relationship with God? But also, how do I help them to understand that they get to have the freedom to decide how they want to do religion, how they want to do spirituality? That is where I am now, that process. And to be honest, it's still something that's evolving, right? I've only been a parent for 5 years, and this new realization has really started to come for me in the last maybe 1 to 2 years of, I feel like I need to play a more active role in helping my children to understand God, religion, spirituality. And now is the time for me to decide how I want to do it. I don't think that I have to do it how my parents did it. I don't think I have to do it the way that was done for me, even though I see the value in what was happening and done for me. I think I can do it differently, but I also realize there still needs to be more guidance, more structure, more modeling for them of, this is what we do, this is how we do. So then they soon can feel comfortable to branch off when they become teenagers or adults to explore however they want, right? So I took some notes on what am I doing now? And this is the part where I would love to hear from you all. How are you as a parent, whether you're a new parent, millennial, whether you're Gen Z, Gen X, whatever? How What was your process in teaching your children about God, religion, spirituality? But then also, there's something about giving them this freedom to explore, but also for them to know they don't have to agree with how I do it. They don't have to stay stuck in the ways that we do it, right? So these are some things that I'm trying, okay? So, one, me and my husband decided that we will give church a try. He was more into it. He was more for it. I will be honest, was very much against it at first. um, but then I just again started to really think about, what did I receive from going to church weekly as a child? And there was so much benefit. Like I just told you, that process, that part of my life is the foundation for my understanding of God and what God does and who God is and what all of it. Yeah, I've branched off, but I don't think that I would be able to have branched off in the way that I did or have such a strong foundation without that. Church provided community. Church provided structure, church provided guidance, church provided socialization as well. So there are so many benefits for us deciding, hey, we're going to go to church a few times a month. At this point, we're averaging like once a month, and introducing our children to that type of religion, that type of religious activity, that type of spiritual community. So we're trying it out, because I really want my kids to know that, you know, understanding God isn't just something that we do in our house. I know that that's not something they're going to do at school. They go to a public school, which is different from me because I went to a private school. So we prayed every day at school all of my life. So, I'm having to be really intentional about where else in their life will they get to understand and talk about God and religion. And I want them to know it's not only something we do at home, but hey, other people do it too, and we can do it in this church community. So right now we're exploring church, and I've also realized that just because you decide to go to church doesn't necessarily mean that you have to then commit to that religion. That I think that was the tension for me for a while. It's like, well, I don't really identify as Christian. But guess what? You don't have to identify as Christian or any other religion to enjoy or benefit from a church community or a religious community. So just being more open and flexible for me on my end of, hey, I can still be a part of this community, bring this into our lives, even if I'm not so closely connected to that religion. Something else that we really started to be really intentional about was just prayer as a family. I think for me, that year in 2013 where I went off to Oakland, my spirituality started to become so much more internal. And I don't know if anyone can relate to this. I think everybody does spirituality differently. Some people are more comfortable doing it in community. Some people are more comfortable doing it more internal and privately. And that for me is where I'm at. I realize like a lot of my spirituality is so internal. It's this internal process that I do only with me. And so when I got married, it was like, ooh, I don't know if I feel comfortable sharing this journey with you because it's mine. But then I also had kids, and it was like, okay, that was my motivation for realizing, let's open up, this spiritual process that you have with yourself and share it with your family. Does anybody, am I crazy? It's not just me, right? So prayer as a family is something that we really have been a lot more intentional about. Praying at mealtime, praying at bedtime, praying together is just something that I'm really introducing to my kids, and we're doing because I want them to know, again, there is this process where we give thanks. There is this process where we talk about our needs and our desires to our higher power, to our creator, to our God, and we get to do that together. Another thing that I'm doing as a parent to help my kids understand spirituality and religion is just having conversations about God. A lot of times this happens at night when we're praying, and I say, okay, what do you want to pray for? Who do you want to pray for? What do you want to talk about? And so I'll lead the prayer, and then sometimes they'll chime in, and it's so cute when little kids pray. They pray for the cutest things. It's like my daughter, she'll say, I thank you for our day today. I thank you for my stuffy, and I thank you for the leaf I found outside. Just the most random things. And it's just like, these are the things she's thankful for. This is her life. And it might seem super insignificant to an adult, but she's 3. This is her life. This is what she wants to talk to God about. And that is okay. So we talk about God, and more so with my oldest, who is almost 5, he'll ask about, what does God look like, and where does God live, and who is God, and what happens when people die? We're starting to have those conversations, which is woo. Maybe we need to do a part 2 spirituality episode, because let me tell you, answering these questions feels like the biggest exam. Like, it's like a question on the test where I'm like, oh my God, I'm not prepared. I don't know how to answer this. So I just try my best, and I really try very hard to, I don't even know how to say it. Like, for instance, what does God look like? How do you answer that? How do you answer that, right? For me, I also try to be very neutral in terms of pronouns. Like, God is not a he, God is not a she. God is an energy. God is a it's hard to explain to a child. And so we have gone to the library to get books about God. We just generally talk about God, but I find myself kind of really trying to be this guide that can help provide this image or idea of God that also is so open, right? I don't want to limit my child by letting him or her think that God is only a he, or that God only lives up there, or that God only likes when we do this. We're open about God, and God, our ideas and beliefs about God can be flexible at this point. And I also like to ask him, like, okay, what do you think about God? What do you think? What do you think? And we just have conversations about God, and it feels really good. Also, something that I am really trying to be intentional about is exposing them to other forms of spirituality without fear, right? Like, I have my tarot deck. They have seen me pull these out. They've seen me pull them out, and they're like, what is this? And I just explain, it's tarot. You pick a card, and then you read the card, you look at the card, and it tells you a little bit about your life or yourself, right? There's no fear here. There's no fear with this in my book, or in my home. I don't want my kids to grow up fearing these things, because they don't have to be fearful. They don't have to be afraid of that. I talk to my kids a lot about their birth charts and astrology, and they have a small understanding. Every now and then my kids will be like, can I look at my birth chart? And I'm like, here, come on, it's right here. We talk about astrology, and we talk about ancestors. We talk about, my dad who has passed on, Pawpaw is what they call him. And I talk to them about how you can talk to Pawpaw. You can think about him. You can look at pictures of him, and that's how you communicate with him. And he's still here guiding us, right? These things are nothing to be afraid of at all. Nothing to be afraid of. And so I am committed to exposing my children to different forms of spirituality and helping them realize that they don't have to be afraid of any of it. Nothing is bad. And rather, it's just that you get to decide at any point in your life which form of spirituality is for you. What form of spirituality feels right for you. You get to decide, but none of them are bad. None of them are evil. None of them are wrong. So that's what I've been doing as a parent in terms of spirituality. And, that process for me is ever changing, ever evolving. And I really do also look forward to when my children grow up a little bit more and they really start to deepen their understanding of God and the universe and life and love and connection and the conversations that can come from that. I really appreciated this conversation today. It just makes me think how even more committed I want to be to this practice, and how I want to model spirituality for them, and not be afraid. So what I want to do, I actually do want to pick a card. I was undecided about whether I wanted to do this, but I do actually. I want to pick do a spread. I can't decide if I want to just pick one card, but for those of you who are listening to this episode today, and you are also thinking about this process, and you're just thinking like, it's maybe similar to me, where it's like, yeah, I do want to think about how to help my kids understand God and religion and spirituality, but I'm not really sure how to do it. Or maybe you have a process where you are, deepening your spiritual practice, and you're showing them, whatever it is. I want to just pull a card or some cards to kind of help guide us through this process of spirituality, understanding, and then how we help our kids cultivate their own spirituality and their own spiritual practices. Because I do think that many of us I just heard my kids again running upstairs. I think many of us are choosing to do religion and spirituality different. It doesn't mean that you have completely divorced yourself from the church or Christianity. It doesn't mean that you're completely against it, but there's probably something that you're doing in terms of your spiritual practice or your understanding of religion or God, something that you're doing that is different. And it may even be something that your family or, the people you grew up with don't understand or don't believe in. And that's okay. It's okay. It's okay, y'all. I'm sorry. I keep hearing noises upstairs and I just heard a and I thought it was a cry, but it actually sounds like they're just playing. I can't. I cannot. All right, I'm shuffling my deck. I want to pull something for us and I'll just see what it says for us. Those of us who are going through this process and just want a little bit more guidance. Maybe I'll do a 3-card spread. My favorite one, guidance from the universe. This spread basically is just like, you know, I'll talk you through it. All right, so I think the deck feels good. I'm going to split it real quick. Y'all know I love to make sure it's good and shuffled. Good and shuffled. Um, okay. So I'm going to do guidance from the universe. This is a 3-card spread. And basically, the first card helps to describe the situation, like how you should be thinking about it, or describes, just the situation you're in. The second card gives you a different perspective for how to look at the situation. And then this third card is action to take. So when moving forward, what you should do. Y'all also know I'm still in the process of learning, so I often use this book, Guided Tarot. If you're on YouTube, you see it. I'm showing you right now. I really like it because it really thoroughly explains each card and how to think about it. Okay, first card, 5 of Cups, and it's actually reversed. 5 of Cups. From my understanding, my memory of this card is, oh gosh, I need to jog my memory. Hold on, let me look right here real quick. 5 of Cups, reversed, silver linings, moving on. Okay, interesting. The reverse 5 of Cups in your reading is a hopeful sign, showing you that you have turned a corner in how you perceive your situation. Seeing the silver lining and accepting the truth puts you on a path to healing and growth. This is really interesting because I think this kind of speaks to, I know where I said I'm at, and maybe where many of you are, where it's like you're turning a corner in terms of how you understand your spirituality or your religious practices, and you're seeing it for what it is. You're seeing the situation for exactly what it is. You're accepting the truth about it. And maybe the truth is you've accepted that this isn't, how you want to move forward. Or maybe the truth is, there's parts of it you like and other parts you don't. Maybe the truth is you and your partner will not align, and that's okay too. Like, just accepting that this is where we are with regard to spirituality, religion. And now that I'm accepting of this truth, we can turn a corner because we're no longer pushing against it. We're no longer not accepting what is, right? There's something about acceptance, like really being able to see a situation for what it is and accepting it, that allows you to move forward because you're no longer fighting against it. So for you, maybe it's that, this card is basically saying, hey, right now, this moment, your understanding of spirituality and religion, there's hope here. You're turning a corner because you're ready to move on to the next phase, and you're on the path to healing or growth or transformation, evolution with regard to this situation in your life. Very interesting. I love it. Okay, second card, King of Cups. This is the different perspective that the universe wants you to take about this situation. So funny. I often get cards like this for this second card in the spread. King of Cups. Keywords: emotional stability, empathy. Let's see. So, again, this is a different perspective or a new perspective that you should be taking about your religion, your spirituality. The King of Cups can represent a person who embodies the qualities of empathy, compassion, and emotional intelligence. It takes action to uphold their boundaries while being mindful of those around them. That person could be you. This card also can represent the energy of a situation that requires setting of boundaries and expression of compassion. That's fascinating because what it makes me think is like, in order for you to grow and develop in your spirituality or your religious practices, you'll need to set boundaries, probably boundaries around what other people are thinking, maybe boundaries around what you previously knew, so that it doesn't influence what you need to learn, boundaries around judgment, boundaries around fear, and also expression of compassion. And that makes me think compassion of yourself as you continue to grow in this process, compassion for other people who don't understand it, and that's okay, compassion for your children as they try to understand spirituality and religion, right? Compassion for the whole process because everyone is learning and growing in a new way. So I'll read this other part. So this part is specifically about spirituality. You are working on creating or maintaining strong boundaries in your relationships. Allow yourself to rely on the presence of support and emotional stability through tough times. It may also mean that you're in a position to support others and provide guidance. Others may look to you for leadership in a creative project. So, again, really ground yourself in this, the qualities of empathy, compassion, boundaries to help you continue to go on this journey. Love that. And then last card, this is the action card. So basically, now that I know what I know, what should I be doing next? Oh, Six of Coins. This is always such a pretty card. And whenever I see this card, I always think of it as like a gift, a present. So let's look at the keywords. Six of Coins, or sometimes pentacles. Some people call them pentacles, some people call them coins. Generosity, sharing resources. Ooh, remember, this is action to take. So it's feeling like it's going to tell us that we need to be sharing our gifts and knowledge of what we learn and what we know. The Six of Pentacles asks, what is your relationship to giving and receiving? Giving offers its own reward in the good feelings that flow from being generous. Receiving can sometimes leave you feeling unworthy or undeserving, especially when you don't have anything to offer in return. Don't feel obligated to give back to the same source you've received from, since they're already satisfied with the act of giving. Instead, remember those moments of kindness and give to others when an opportunity arises. The more comfortable you become with receiving, the more abundance will flow in your life. So there's something about this card that for me, it's like your next steps in your journey of spirituality, religion, exploring this process for you is really going to be giving, yes. So giving of your time, giving of your love, giving of your connection, but it's also going to be receiving and accepting, right? So I think sometimes we miss this part when it comes to our spiritual practices. It's like love is at the center, but not just love for other people, love for ourselves. And I think many of us just don't do a good enough job of really loving ourselves. And loving yourself also means allowing other people to love you and allowing other people to support you, allowing other people to care for you. And I think this is what this card is saying. Like, yes, be generous, be giving, be supportive, but also allow that to still flow in your life from other people as well. Open yourself up to love, open yourself up to connection, allow yourself to feel the gifts of people and connection and abundance. That's what this card is telling you. Open up and allow these things to flow to you, because you are deserving and you're worthy of it. You don't have to be so transactional in your giving or your receiving. Give freely and also receive freely as well. Okay. I hope that helped y'all. I love it. I love tarot, y'all. Oh my God. Because that was so helpful to me. And so I really hope that it was helpful to you all as well. Thank you for going on this journey with me. I hope that it helped you. I hope that something here stuck or resonated with you. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with someone else. Also, like I said, tell me in the comments, on Instagram, on YouTube, on whatever platform you're listening to. How are you doing this process? What are you learning through this process? What has worked for you in terms of helping your kids to understand spirituality and religion? I would love to know. Okay, we will talk soon. Bye.